Okay, so once you've set up the annexes, the bed and flies, and you've opened the door, the van's door is connected, you're ready to turn on the power. So if you're not going to camp at a campsite, if you follow me inside, I'll just take my shoes off. You'll see under here, under the dinette, there's a switch. There's an isolation switch under there. So you can turn on that battery switch, and that means you're now running on the power supply. If you have a look at that black box, you'll see there an orange light that's lit that actually says battery. The light to the left of it is green. That is mains. When you are connected to a 240 volt mains supply at a caravan park or at a home, then that green light will come and it will mean you're using mains power, not the battery, and it will actually act to charge the battery at the same time. If you want to run hot water into the van, the next thing you need to do is hit on. That water heater switch will stay red until the hot water service is lit and it started heating water. When it has heated, when it has lit the pilot light, that light will turn off, and it will take about 20 minutes for it to start to heat the water enough that the water will come out warm. I'm going to turn this off now though, just because we're not connected to mains power. Okay, before the lights will come on, it's very important to plug this switch in. This cigarette lighter socket plugs in, and that provides power to the LED roof lights. So you'll see they have a blue feature, which is, I presume, for anti-mozzies, and you have a white light feature. That means they're on. The fridge can be turned on pretty simply. When you're plugged in at a campsite, you have this switch here. So if you're plugged in on battery, you would switch it to the battery. If you're on a mains power at a campsite, you flick it over to the mains power. If you're on gas, you would switch it to that feature, and it's a little bit hard to turn on if you don't know what you're doing. I'd suggest you give me a call at that point and we'll walk you through that process. Okay, when you're on mains power or on the battery, there's a pump that automatically works for these two taps. If you don't have a battery and you're connected to mains water through the back, and I'll show you that in a second, then you can use the hand pump to pump water out. And that's a really easy pump. It's just up and down nice and slow, and the water will flow through that all the time. You have this coast to coast meter, just shows you how much battery and how much water you've got left in your power. So if you check the water tanks, oh, that's the pump, sorry. That will tell you how much water is in your tanks. These are empty, and it tells you what your battery charge is, and my battery's full. Okay, once you're all connected up, you'll need to connect the water supply. So the blue hose is a special food grade water hose. It's not made for just anything, and it will live next to the gas bottle in the front of the boot. So on this side of the boot. So the way you open that, the way you connect that is through this area here. You'll see there are two openings and a tap opening. If you're on mains water at a campsite somewhere and you don't need to fill up water tanks, this just connects straight on. Just help if I took the hose connection out. Connects straight on. The other end goes to your tap. Turn that on. We keep these connections on there because they're not always at the campsites. And then you can turn the tap on. As long as you're on mains water supply, you don't need anything else. If you're going to go somewhere off grid, then what we suggest is you fill up both water tanks, and I would do that once you're at your campsite or close to, because otherwise it's an extra 160 kilograms of weight in the back of the van, because they're 80 litre water tanks each, I think they are. So you fill that up, and then the coast-to-coast panel that you saw before will feed from these tanks. The other thing to note is on the external heater, once the gas is turned on, there is an electric switch here that says on. You don't need to touch that. That's there for if you're running off 240 volt mains power. I've left that on for most campers because most people will be camping at a campsite rather than free camping. And then you've also got the power supply. Now, camper trailers and caravans don't use a normal 10 amp power supply that you'd use at your home. They use a 15 amp power supply. And you'll know that because inside this, and I've got mine connected to the RCD, but inside this, the bottom plug that's normally there is much larger than on a 10 amp house power supply. So I supply you with a safety switch that comes pre-connected to your cable. So this means when you get to your campsite, they've usually got them built in. You can still supply this. It is waterproof, it doesn't matter. You can plug this straight into the meter at the campsite. And if you follow me here, this is where you plug it into the back of the van to provide mains power to the van. There's a power inlet here at the back. As you can see, that bottom pin is much larger than usual. And that is the 15 amp power supply pin. So that will all connect straight up with that hose. It's also a heavy duty lead, a 15 amp lead. Made on purpose for caravans and high powered equipment. Do not use a standard extension lead from a home. There's a risk that you'll set fire to the van or the cable. There is a safety switch built in to that panel that you saw where the battery isolator switch is. That will automatically trigger if there's a problem. But I've got a double one, as I said, in that yellow pod device as well. Last but not least, connect up your grey water or dirty water hose. The expulsion point in the van. So this lives with the water supply hose in the front boot, same as the power supply. And there's a little black outlet here. It doesn't have a cap. There, you just plug that on and then walk this over to somewhere where you want it to drain out of the way and not make your campsite or someone else's campsite wet. Be considerate where you drain this. Most paid campsites will tell you where to put it. If you're in free camping somewhere, I just run it well away from the van and where it's not going to contaminate any fresh water, rivers or water supplies.